All right, welcome back, everybody. This is episode 3 of our podcast, Plays Well with Others. As always, I'm Andrew Moore, and I am joined by my illustrious co-host, Jess Agnew. Jess, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a Friday that we're filming this, so I'm like highest level of energy you're going to see me ever.
All right. So you broke the one of the 10 commandments of
I did.
podcasting. You told everybody when we're recording this.
It's a good leadway
You,
into
you
what you want to
I
talk
just
about,
want
though.
everybody to know. It is. So at the time of this recording, we've been doing this a little less than a week in terms of filming and making episodes. And first off, just out of the gate, I want to say thank you to everybody that shared, that's interacted on LinkedIn and with the content on Facebook and YouTube and all of the podcasts, of course, as well. We've gotten some really great support and some good feedback and some good engagement. So really appreciate that. What I wanted to share just briefly is that I've had some conversations with folks as I've kicked this off that they shared that they've always wanted to start a podcast of their own, and they've been intimidated by buying the gear and learning the configuration and distribution and all of that. And I shared that apprehension for a long time. It took me 10 years to get this one out, right? So what I can say is that the best way to do it is just to do it. There's some complexities here, and as always, Jess and I are great resources because we don't know everything, but we're figuring it out as we go. We may have recorded the first episode twice, and even on the second attempt, still wound up getting our third co-host barking the entire episode. And then when we filmed our second episode, we had some technical difficulties there too that I'm sure you will notice, or maybe you won't, and don't tell me. But all that to say, podcasting is not easy, but if you do it, it'll come out better than you think it will. And there's resources out there that simplify the process and make it as easy as it possibly can be. But with that, I want to dig into our actual episode content. So we met last week. By the time you hear this, we met last week with our good friend Kelly Silva, who is a project manager with a company here in Nashville called Trenesis. And we talked about a lot of great things. If you haven't heard that episode, it's episode 2. Go back and listen to that and then come back here. We'll wait. No, I'm just kidding. So one of the big things that we talked about with Kelly that I wanted to expand upon and chat with you about, Jess, is this idea that company culture is a lot. There's a lot to culture. And Kelly made a lot of great call outs about how she sees herself specifically as an agent of culture.
Mm-hmm.
And she made a lot of comments about techniques and strategies that she uses to not only create culture, but also to consume culture. Yeah. I'm really curious with you as a project management professional, how did that align with how you look at culture, how you look at creating culture, and especially as a people leader, how does that feel to you?
I mean, Kelly was spot on with so many of the things that she brought up, and some of them I might have even learned from her just having worked with her before. But there are things that I've definitely adopted and put into my everyday practice. Calling on someone by name, as simple as it sounds, engages you with that person and draws them out and gives a voice in the room that maybe otherwise wouldn't have felt like they could contribute. A lot of new baby devs maybe are intimidated by senior devs, and maybe they have these great ideas or they're coming at it from a new angle, and maybe they don't want to interject in that larger room. But when they're called upon by the project manager, suddenly they have permission. Suddenly they're called upon to, or when they're called upon, it kind of gives them that like validation that they needed to say the thing that they wanted to say. It can also be intimidating to be called on, so you kind of have to respect if somebody draws back from it. And I think the way that Kelly described it, kind of feeling out the people in the room and paying attention to them, really it set well with me in terms of how to do that. One of the, I think, most important things about project management is not what you as the project manager have to say, but rather you being the person who's lifting up the voices of the people who need to talk. So you're not going to be, as the project manager, the most valuable person in the room in terms of knowledge that you're contributing. But what you can do is be the most valuable person in the rooms in terms of making sure that the right people are given a platform and the right people are brought together so that they can have the right conversations.
You made a comment that I really wanted to highlight. That I think you made the comment in passing, but you said that a key role of the project manager or anyone that's filling that role in the room at the time was to give people permission to participate. And
Yes.
I understand not everyone out there is looking for permission or needs permission, because they're,
No.
like I said,
Some of them
in the
feel
last
very
episode too,
entitled to contributing.
there's different personalities. Exactly. There's different personalities, but I was definitely in the first years of my career as a junior dev, I was one of those people.
Yeah.
I'm a listener. I like to listen. I like to learn. And I, at the time, was dealing with this wow, I locked up there.
Just
Sorry,
difficult person.
There's a word for it, and I'm blanking on it. It's late on a Friday, and that word just escaped me. Imposter syndrome. So I was dealing with this imposter syndrome as a junior dev, that I felt like I had nothing to contribute because I couldn't possibly know what to say or what technical aspects were a part of this conversation. And had I had someone that called on me and says, "What do you think?" Well, one, I probably would have been terrified because I don't know. What am I supposed to think? Somebody tell me what I'm supposed to think. But on top of that, that would have been a trial by fire and made me very comfortable with contributing to the conversation, even if it is a less nuanced question that I'm asking, or simply just being engaged for engagement's sake. But I really appreciated how you put that permission to participate. I think that's something we could all use a little of from time to time.
Kelly has this air about her that's very like mama bear, so she also does a good job of putting people at their ease, something that I would very much like to think that I have as well, or that I at least try to have when I can. But I think, coupling that, just being comfortable around others, making other people feel comfortable along with that permission, is really where the magic comes in, that I think Kelly does a great job of demonstrating. It not only do you have the permission, but you also don't feel like you're going to get reprimanded if you say the wrong thing. You don't feel like it's going to be a big deal if it's the wrong thing. You can engage without fear of anything bad happening.
An interesting thing about project managers, coming from my developer experience, if we pull this up a level and we talk about someone that's potentially hiring project managers, whether you're a project management professional or if you're a technologist or whatever role you're in, if you're trying to bring project managers into your organization, I'm going to vastly oversimplify this because there's nuance to people, but I've seen two different camps of project manager. You have one that I think Kelly falls into, and that's we'll call them the caretaker. They're the person that wants the team to feel accepted, wants the team to feel happy about what they're doing, and focuses more on the people aspect of the project than maybe the individual details in the Gantt chart. And not to say they let the Gantt chart fall by the wayside,
No.
but their view of success of a project is not just that we got the thing done. It's that we got it done in a way that built up the people, built up the team, built up the organization.
It's people
and
over
then you
process.
Have another, exactly, bingo. And that's actually going to vastly simplify this second camp. It's kind of the other way around. Not to say they don't care about the people, but they are the analytical mind, similar to an engineer that's focusing more on the process, focusing more on the technical details than maybe they're focusing on the individuals in the team. not to say either is right or wrong, but you need each for a very specific purpose. And if you have a larger team and you have a more large scope project, maybe you're going to focus more on the process over people style of project management than you are the other way. But if you have a very small team and a small company and you're trying to stand up this function of project management, you really need to focus on the one that's going to breathe life into your team and to be a caretaker, more so because of that need to really build acceptance, build inclusion. It's going to be a different focus for you.
Yeah, and I think you're right. You're hitting the nail on the head. Knowing when to be one way or the other is a key important detail in being a project manager.
Exactly. And another topic that came to mind, because we're kind of going through the sound bites that Kelly generated for us, which were awesome. She made a comment that, we were talking about how going remote impacted project management and impacted her role specifically.
Yes.
And because of her personality as being a caretaker, she went through the whole process of describing, there's the minutia. We got sent home. We had time scheduled where we got to come into the office to get our equipment and all that. But she started focusing really heavily on her relationships with her team.
Mm-hmm.
And I was expecting a similar answer when I asked the question, but as I unpacked that later on in the night, I was thinking through, well, she was in the office and she was able to build relationships with people in person. Yeah. But now that I'm at Nations Lending in my last company, I've been in positions where I've had to build relationships with people that I'd never met face to face.
Fully remote. Mm-hmm.
And it's vastly different. And from my perspective, and I want your perspective too, Jess, for sure, because we're different sides of the same coin personality wise, I think. But from my perspective, it is harder for me to build a close relationship with somebody remotely. It's almost like this abstraction layer where I know you're a person and I treat you like a person, but we'll say the harmony or the vibe in there. And at my last company, I had the opportunity to actually travel to these remote offices or different offices to go meet people in person. And I found that very valuable because I was able to go have coffee, have lunch, have dinner with people and really build the relationship. And doing that once or twice a quarter kind of tided me over, held me over until the next time I got to go there. Each time the emotions just ticked down just a little bit and we were able to do business, and then we get to a frustration point of being separate, being remote.
To go visit.
Okay, I'm going to go back up there. Right.
Yeah.
So how has that been for you, and how do you think you've dealt with it, or any strategies, techniques that you've come up with to make that easier?
It's a really good question. And it's such an important question in the industry right now as a whole, like across many industries right now. So you're talking about some things that you can kind of fluff into the remote work to make it function and make the relationships function similar to how they did last time. And I think you're absolutely right. Just meeting in person every now and then, doing something fun, having lunch, like talking as people, not just meeting for a meeting in person, but actually meeting up in person. It takes down that wall, like you said, and it makes them a human. So then when you meet back together on a call, A, you have something to talk about, but B, you also already have that established. But what about the situations where you can't do that? What about where I've worked with people for 5 years and I've never met them in person, not even once? Well, it's harder. Like it's harder. But there are, I think, some really important things that you can do that will help you build those relationships. And Kelly touched on one of them that I think is just a fantastic one, which is don't ignore the stuff that's happening around. And I don't mean like let it interrupt your meeting and, make it a big deal out of things. But just the other day, I was on a call with a group of people and we were talking about something serious. And at the very end of the call, I was like, all right, now can we talk about the cat door? Because somebody had this door in their house that had this little cat tushy with a tail, and it was a cat door. And I'd been staring at it for the whole meeting. And I was like, we need to talk about this. And it ended up being a really fun moment where everyone's like, wait, what? Wait, what are we talking about? And we started laughing, and we had a great last 3 minutes of the call where we were just laughing and joking around and talking about cat doors and who was a cat person and who was a dog person. Now, was that pertinent for the meeting? Should I have done that, with all of these really valuable people for that meeting? Well, no. But should I have done it? Yeah, I think I should have, because every time you make that breakaway into establishing them as a human, you start to build that connection that you do so easily in person that's a little harder electronically. I know nobody's going to like this, but having your camera on and looking at people's faces while you're talking on calls is actually a really big help for that. And I'm not saying do it every day. I'm not saying do it every call of every day, but maybe that first 15-minute stand up is cameras on. And you look at people in the face when they're talking, and you look at their eyes and you see how they react to things, and you make sure everyone's engaged. And if they're not, you call on them, talk to them, get them engaged to the conversation, show them a picture of, your dog trying to sit on your cat's head or whatever the case may be. Those little humanizing moments, I think, are even more important when you're electronic.
Yeah, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of meeting styles, but there was a study that came out recently that I suspect a lot of you have seen because it's been shared around LinkedIn a lot, about the impact of meeting schedules and timing on stress levels. And there's a very real reaction that your brain has when you go back to back to back to back meetings with no breaks in between. Even just four 30-minute meetings with no break, significant increases in stress level. With 30-minute breaks between meetings, it's flat. So when we talk about the camera on situation and the virtual calls and meeting fatigue, Zoom fatigue, it's real for sure. And so as you're considering, to project managers out there, to people leaders, whoever's booking meetings, as you're considering how you want to get things done in a virtual environment, I would encourage you to make calls, engage with people, get the relationships going, but also be considerate of what does this look like to everybody else on the team, and how does this feel? Because I mentioned yesterday. It was in fact, but for you it will be last week. Episode. So I mentioned that when COVID happened, when the pandemic happened, I'm dating the podcast again, the lockdown was so jarring that before, when we were in the office, we didn't realize it, but we were coming in a few minutes late and we were going to get coffee and we were talking and chatting. And throughout the day, there'd be opportunities to run into somebody in the office and chat with them for 20 or 30 minutes. Yep. And what happened when we locked down, when we all went remote, was all of that time got replaced by meetings. I can almost guarantee you across the board, unless you have some incredible corporate culture, and if you do, let me know, because I'm curious to see how that works and how you.
We want to interview you.
But all of that time got replaced by meetings immediately. It was almost funny to me. We went home on a Friday. I came in on Monday and I had a call at 7:30 in the morning. And the fact
which would have been unheard of prior to that.
Well, right. I mean, I would have been in the car at 7:30 in the morning, but the fact that it happened so quickly that, and I don't know if it was conscious or not. Somebody said, "Okay, well, I got to get this done, and I know you're awake. I know you're moving, so let's do a call." That never slowed down, in my opinion. So we've got to be careful about what our calls do to people, and how many calls we're doing, and there's a whole nother episode on that too. But
so
that I
one
wanted
piece
to
of
bring that up.
advice, yeah, one piece of advice that I did give my team was making sure that they were setting aside time for themselves during the day. I told them to put their lunch on their calendar so that they had their lunch hour on there. I told them to update their calendar with their work hours so that people weren't scheduling them outside of their work hours. And if they were, they had a very clear and easy reason or way to go, hey, you scheduled this outside of my work hours. I'm happy to attend anytime I'm available within my work hours. And I also think scheduling your own focus time is another important thing that you should do. Those things are very important. A lot of times I'll pop time on my calendar just to get a task done that I know I need to get done. And it'll be a meeting with just me and myself. But it's all about just making sure I give myself the time to do those things. Because you're right, Andrew, like there's a balance of like, I need to be effective at work. And the best way for me to be effective is if my mental health is in a good place. And one of the best ways I can do that is protecting my schedule and making sure I'm giving myself a time to be effective and also be a person. So one other thing I just want to mention really fast. Oh, go ahead. No, you go first.
Well, okay, all right. So what a term that I coined, I think I coined it. It may have been a pre-existing term, but I've been talking about entrepreneurial mindset, and it's a thought cue for me to make sure that every meeting that I go to or every meeting that I book has some sort of has a value to it. And definitely a value better than me not being in it. And that's been helpful for me. And I suspect it's helpful for most people. When I've got on my calendar, I've got 8 to 5 every day, probably 2 or 3 deep. Where is my time best spent? And I know I've done it to you, Jess, where I'm like, look, I'm not coming to anything this afternoon because I've got to do something else. If you can cover it, I'd appreciate it. If you can't cover it, then let's move it.
We reschedule.
Because it's more valuable for me to be doing something different.
And protecting your time and speaking up when you need to is even more important in the remote world. Okay, so the one thing I was going to mention is on the call with Kelly, you blew my mind. And I don't know why it was like such a moment for me, but you said, well, we call them calls now instead of meetings. And I was like, oh my God, we do. Like, I didn't even catch the switch in vernacular. It just happened so naturally. But even like the few times I was in an office, I would be like, oh, I got to go to a call. And I was walking to a meeting room saying I got to go to a call. And it's so funny because a lot of terms that we used in office don't really apply anymore. And it kind of underlines that change in how you kind of that cultural change within being remote versus being in the office. You talked about what's your elevator pitch? How do you pitch something in an elevator to someone? And we would talk about that a lot when we were in the office. You have to have an elevator pitch, or you'd get a drive-by. Someone would stop by your desk and give you a task. And you're like, oh, that drive-by threw my whole day into chaos. Well, we don't have those anymore. Now someone, when they throw your day into chaos, it's because they're calling you when you're green on Teams. And you're like, excuse me, how dare you call me when I'm green on Teams? That's not okay. You have to schedule a meeting with me. That's your modern day drive-by.
Oh, man. That's rough. So I can't express how offensive I find it when someone calls me when I'm available.
I do it occasionally. I'm not going to lie. I do it occasionally, but I try not to. To say
that out loud seems precious.
It seems silly now, right?
Time, right.
But you're busy. Like, your time is important. You're available.
So, right. And that when someone walked up to me in the office, it was almost like, oh, somebody wanted to see me and they like me and they came to say hello. Now it's like, how dare you call me? What in the world? You schedule time on my calendar so that I can be 3 deep at 8:30, like always. It's your turn to blow my mind. It's insane.
Yeah, we've watched a really huge culture shift that probably would have spanned the 10 years this culture change would have taken if it weren't for COVID. But because of that, it happened so quickly that I didn't even notice it literally until you said that on the call the other day. And like, again, just my mind was just like, what?
Yeah. Does that mean that drive-by has gone back to the meaning it had before office culture?
Now it's related to gangs again. Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like if I got a drive-by today, that would be significantly worse than when I was in the office.
Oh, that's really funny.
And then that begs the question,
exactly.
if you have an elevator pitch in 2023, what is it now?
Yeah.
All right, we're
Is
going
it
to have
your?
to put a challenge out there. Yeah, we're going to have
You
to
know
put
how
a
you
challenge
have those
out there.
meetings where you
You
have
name
like
the elevator pitch.
well, you have those meetings where you have just like 5 minutes at the end. So I think it's your, can I steal you for 1 second on a different topic? That's what it is.
Oh, we need a
You
top
know you've heard
three
it.
of, you have, and we need like a top three most irritating corporate culturisms for 2023. So
No, because then we're
let
going
me
to go
call out
through and
the.
have you done this? Check. Have you done this? Check.
Well, right. It's like one of those Facebook posts where you've got a list of 100 foods and how many have you had. Let's play officeism bingo. I think that there's the
Yes.
next game.
It's an upcoming
game idea.
episode, guys. Yeah. Yeah. Office bingo.
Oh.
How many times have you had someone grab you at the end of the meeting and say, well, I've got you. Could I share another topic? Can I start another topic with you? That's what it is. It's well, I've got you. That's your elevator pitch is now while I've got you.
All right, so we're already formulating the ideas for the Plays Well with Others merch line. That may be one of them.
Exactly.
Okay.
So one more thing
we've
that
gone off the rails.
Bringing it back, I have two things I want to talk
Yes.
about. The first one is one of the most poignant things that I think Kelly said the entirety of the last episode, and you actually named the episode it because I just think it was that impactful, was how are we finding the joy? Or she said, just we need to be finding the joy. And it is such an important thing, such an important topic. And it bleeds right into my next one, which is like defining culture and how you actually define culture. And I think what Kelly said, how you're finding joy with your team, might be a good definition of what is your company culture, or not a full definition, but it's part of the definition of what is your company culture. Just on that note, really fast before I look to you, Andrew, to kind of give us some additional thoughts on this, is just this is one of the things that I watched with my dad growing up that was probably my favorite thing I took away from him. He plays so hard and he works so hard, and you can literally watch his tone of voice change when he's going from playful Andy to serious Andy. And I noticed that in myself as well. But I think, and I've seen it in people like Kelly and others where they have playful voice and then they're like, all right, well, let's get rolling. And then they go just immediately serious. I love that in people. I love finding people who just have that ability to bounce back and forth, because I think it gives you that ability to work really hard together, but still find pleasure and find joy in what you're doing together.
Right. And that's been some of my favorite teams that I've ever worked on have been the work hard, play hard type of mentality.
Exactly.
And I find that most of them that have that mentality were the ones that were the closest knit, were the ones that I still have close relationships with, 10, 15 years on. And I truly believe that's because when you work hard, when you're out slaying dragons together, you build a tighter bond because you've accomplished something. If you're not grinding and accomplishing and succeeding, it's really hard to kind of form that camaraderie, because you're largely a team of one. You're not shoulder to shoulder pushing towards the same goal.
Yeah.
And so
such a great
that's
point.
bringing, and it's something that I believe is a core concept of anything that we talk about with digital. It it's an underpinning of being a successful team is that you have a shared vision, you have a shared mission, and you are able to build a highly performing team, accomplish things, succeed, but really enjoy the process while you're doing it. And I've gone back and forth so many times, dozens of times, on how to elevator pitch the podcast, and it all comes down to building successful teams while actually having fun and enjoying it. And so that does bring us up on time. We're at our half-hour mark, and someone just pulled into my driveway, so I suspect we're going to get the third co-host here shortly. So thanks again for listening to Plays Well with Others. This has been episode 3. Thanks for joining us.